Welcome back to the shop. All right, in today's episode, we're going to be working on another work van. Friend, construction worker, contractor, they've got an issue with the brakes. They had an employee try to fix the brakes, and something went wrong, and it's kind of out of their element, so they brought it to me to try to figure out what's going on with it. It's basically getting the front wheels really hot, so I'm pretty sure the calipers are dragging. Not sure why exactly yet. I haven't looked at it. I did take it for a test drive. Went on a short one just right around the house just to make sure the brakes weren't going to like totally go out on me or something. And they felt okay. It felt like they may be dragging a little bit, or the van's underpowered. I couldn't really tell, but I could like put it in neutral and the van would roll. So I didn't think they were totally locked up. So if they are dragging, it's not a whole lot at the moment, at least. So then I took it down the road, and as the brakes got warmed up, they started shaking the steering wheel and pulsating the pedal, which usually the shaking of the steering wheel is usually from the front, and pulsating of the pedal is usually from the rear. So it feels to me like we've got warped rotors and possibly warped drums or discs, rotors in the back. I'm not sure what it has yet. I haven't even got it up in the air yet. But we're going to pop this thing up in the air and do a visual inspection and see what's going on. First, I'll pop the hood, and I'm going to take a peek at the brake fluid. All right, we're going to take a look at this fluid, see what's going on in here. Well, it doesn't look good at all. We'll take a little piece of white rag and just stuff it in there and see what it looks like. That's transmission fluid. I swear, I've never seen that before. Can't put, scratch that. You can't put power steering fluid or transmission fluid in your master cylinder. That causes problems. Man alive. Oh boy. What are we getting into here? I didn't expect that. That's a new one even for me. I've been around a lot of cars, and I've been in a lot of shops. I've owned a shop for 16 years. I've been in this business for 30. And I've worked on stuff beyond that. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody put transmission fluid in a brake master cylinder. So, oh boy, we're gonna get this thing up in the air and see what it looks like. I pulled the back wheel on the passenger side. Shoes look good. This is turning. He said something about the grease came out of the hub or something. I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, that hub's discolored. Maybe I'll pop the cap off. I don't know. It turns freely. Pull this wheel off. All right, well, it said they put pads and rotors on it. Ain't no way. That rotor's hammered. So are the pads. You're definitely gonna need rotors and pads in the front. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to start over. Super wavy. It's got a lip. I don't know what they used or what they did. They look like they're installed right, other than it's got transmission fluid in the freaking hydraulic system. What is that? Something sticky. Let's pull this back one off just for shits and giggles. Alright, sorry the lighting's kind of bad in here. Rear shoes look good. This is what it looked like on the other side too. I don't see anything leaking. A little groovy, but not too terribly bad on the drum surface. I'm just going to adjust front rotors and pads and flush all this junk out. all this transmission fluid out, and then go from there. I'm just gonna see if this piston will collapse in okay, if it's locked up. Seems to be collapsing. Let's check the other side. All right, so back on this mighty whitey here, we got some parts rounded up. We're gonna replace the front rotors and pads and calipers. We're gonna drain all this transmission fluid, that's right, I said transmission fluid, out of the system. We're gonna put new drums on the back. The shoes look good, but the drums are warped. I don't have time for running them to machine shops and having them machined. This one has pretty good lip on it, even though he said that they're new. I don't know about all that. We're not even going to take a chance with them. We're just going to start fresh parts, no lips, good cross hatches. We'll swap the bearings as long as they look good. I got some new seals to go on the back side of the rotor to hold the grease in. We'll pack the bearings, pop all this together, get all this fluid out of this thing. I'm going to go ahead and suck the master cylinder out now. I'm going to use this pneumatic evacuator to suck this master cylinder out, get all that transmission fluid out of there. And this thing's about worn out, slower than Christmas, but it still pulls a vacuum. Probably time for an upgrade on that deal. I've had it for a long time. All right, I got that all sucked out, and I'm gonna wipe it out. There's quite a bit of sludge in this chamber. Pretty nasty. I may have made a mistake by not selling a master cylinder. I probably should have just went ahead and sold a master cylinder, but it was working when I drove it, so I didn't go that route. But we may end up having to drop back and punt. Maybe we can get it cleaned out real good, flushed out with good clean brake fluid. People, there's reasons why certain fluids are in certain areas. Transmission fluid does not belong in your brake system. Okay, this wiped out pretty good. We're gonna fill that up with brake fluid. That way when I take my calipers off, it'll at least wash those lines out. All right, we're gonna pop these drums off. You see the shoes. Well, I don't have any lights going on. As you can see, our shoes are in good shape. The rotors, the drums were warped. So I was getting a bunch of pulsation out of the pedal. So we're gonna put some new ones on. They have a light coating of oil on them, so I'm gonna take a rag and some brake cleaner. These don't have a real heavy coating of oil, so I'm not worried about really washing them out. I'm just gonna wipe them out real good. We'll make sure that they're in adjustment. There's a adjusting wheel right here. There's a plug. Well, that plug from the backside's solid. Probably could knock it out, but basically you adjust your star washer here. Sometimes you have to pull that back to get it forward or backwards, and you just get it on until it's almost touching. You don't want it tight, because then it's going to get hot and expand, and then it'll be dragging once you're driving down the road. Those actually feel perfect, really. And we'll test it more later. I'm going to leave this wheel and tire off because we're going to bleed these brakes, and I don't want transmission fluid and brake fluid getting all over those tires. All right, so we're done with that side. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, then we'll move to the front. We're going to pop this cap off so we get the cotter pin, nut, and the bearing out of there. We make special tools to pop these caps off, but I've never bought one, so I've never had an issue really getting them off. Just take a chisel and walk it around, open the gap up, pop it out. All right, cotter pins out. Nut was just on hand tight, but yeah, I don't know about that. There's the bearing. It looks good. I mean, this grease is dirty, but it's not a big deal. Wash that stuff off and pack it with new grease. Get that bearing out of there. We'll pop that seal out. You can just walk these seals out. If you're careful, you can reuse them, but I'm not going to reuse them. I bought new ones. So we're going to chunk these. Check out the inner bearing. They look okay. I don't see any bluing, scarring, or anything like that. We'll clean all that old grease off and see what it looks like after that. This rotor is going to get scrapped. The dog's going to bark the whole time I'm trying to film. Okie dokie. Just going to wipe these bearings off real good. I sprayed them with a little bit of brake clean. I'm not going to worry about getting all the grease out of them, because it had grease in them and they weren't making any noise, and they weren't wobbling or anything like that. They're not any weird looking bearings, so I'm not too overly concerned about them. I'm just going to throw them straight off in the grease. They make bearing fudge packers. You pack full of grease and you put your bearing in, you cram it down and it packs them, and they work good. I've had them before. I've either misplaced mine or somebody borrowed it, never brought it back. I don't know where it's at. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, which is not hard. It is messy, but there's nothing clean about this job anyway. So I basically just cram them down in my wheel bearing grease tub, pull them back up, and I just start working it in. You can slap the palm of your hand with the grease, force all that grease in there. You want all that grease inside those rollers. That's what they mean by packing them. You're packing the grease. Oops, just dropped the blob. And those bearing packers are good. They force it through a little better than you can do with your hand. Put some grease on the spindle shaft. I just do some inspections and make sure it looks like there's grease all the way through. Just kind of cram it in. That will be good. Get the big bearing on the inner bearing. And just kind of, I'm making a mess. Shit. And this is probably a display of the greasiest, most messiest way to do it. And that's why people buy those bearing packers. because it's really no good way to do this without just getting nasty, but good thing for rubber gloves. Slapping the bearing against the palm of your hand with that loaded full of grease will basically do the same thing the bearing packers do. Bearing packer is just a more efficient way to do it and cleaner. All right. All right, I've got some new wheel seal. Make sure it looks like the right one. It does. We can commence on sticking our greasy mess of a bearing back in. All right, and just take a hammer. Tap your seal in. Take your rotor. Slide her back on up in there. Your other greasy bearing. I'll pack some grease in there. No seal on this side, just this washer. It's got a little groove right there. It slides into that. And you got your castle nut. tighten that up. You don't want to have it so tight that it doesn't spin, but you don't want it so loose that your bearings get a lot of play in them. All right, that feels pretty good. It's not too tight, it's not loose. Sliding a new cotter pin in. Pop our dust cap back on. Should be good. Mount our caliper and pads, reattach our line, but I may step on those brakes once. Try to blow some fluid out of them before. I'm just worried about that ATF that's in there. Okay, we're finished here. We got the bearing set, we got the cap on. We're gonna pop our pads. We've got new pads, ceramic pads that are going to go in our new calipers, or the reman calipers, so the old ones will go back for a core charge. All right, inside pad is in. Just snap down into the caliper. Sometimes you have to give the clip a little help. Go. Inside pad's shorter than the outside pad. It's kind of an odd design. See? Yeah, still work, I guess. Kind of strange. I don't recall ever seeing that before. All right, we're gonna slide our calipers on. I'm just checking my slides here. They look good. It's an old van, 2000 model Chevrolet, 1500 Express. Got 222,000 miles on it, if I remember right. These calipers are marked right and left on the box. They come with all the hardware. Comes with the new bolt, slide bolts. It comes even with a new brake line, banjo bolt with both the crush washers. One of my washers stuck on the line. I gotta get it off. Take a chisel. There we go. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take that same evacuation pump that I used to suck the master cylinder out. I've got a little brake bleeder attachment for it. I've already filled it up there. I'm gonna go ahead and put my other caliper on, and then I'll show you how I do a little brake flush, brake bleed procedure by myself. Sometimes you still have to have somebody help you. Some of these gyms you have to have a scan tool to bleed the brakes, which I have, and I've also made videos of that, explaining how to use that. You can go back and check in the video library and find those. I'll double check my caliper bolts real quick. They're good to go. Make sure my line's good, which I've already looked at. Good, it's not twisted. Bearings seem to be set good. Everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll show you bleeding. I'm not going to show you the other side. It's hard to film on that other side in this little shop. And it's just the exact same thing as we're doing here. So if you have any questions about anything, just drop them in the comments. Be glad to answer any questions the best I can. All right, we're going to loosen our bleeder screw up. Normally have a attachment for this to fit onto these bleeder screws, but I guess I took it off or something and I can't find it. I'll probably find it in 2027 when I finally clean this shop. Oh, I got the air shut off. Really loud, so I'm not going to show you every wheel. It's like sucking the stuff out of the reservoir with the other fitting, but we'll let this go until we've got clear fluid coming out. And then I'll do the other front wheel, then I'll do the back, and then I'll come back and do the front again. I'll let that go for a little while, and I'll monitor the master cylinder. I'll keep adding to the master cylinder so it doesn't go dry. And then I'll, once I get all the wheels done and the master cylinder's good, I'll check it with my foot. And if it doesn't feel good, I'll see if the scan tool has a bleed procedure for this vehicle. And if it doesn't, then we'll go, and the pedal doesn't feel good at that time, I'll do a manual bleed procedure with pumping the brakes and cracking each bleeder screw one at a time, starting with this back right wheel. I always start with the back right when I'm bleeding, but right now I'm not really bleeding. I am, but I'm mainly flushing nasty transmission fluid out of the brake lines. Hopefully it all comes out. All right, we tried bleeding the brakes on this van, and we had luck with the fronts, but no luck with the back. Got very little fluid out of the back and could not get the back brakes to get any fluid pressure enough to actuate the brake shoes. So I'm going to put a master cylinder on it. The master cylinder was really dirty when we cleaned it out, so we're going to go ahead and put a brand new one on it. I'm about to do a bench bleed right here. We got this Dorman kit that allows you to put, which this thing's dripping everywhere, put your fittings in, run hoses up, and we're going to do that and bench bleed this thing real quick. Okay, this thing is kind of grabby bled a little bit. I pumped it a little bit with my fingers over the holes, and wasn't working out too good, so I went ahead and bought this little bleeder kit. I used to have one, but it's eluded me. So got the fluid in it. I'm just going to take this screwdriver. This will work just fine. You want the hoses to stay in the fluid as you're pumping it. Do your best to get a complete stroke. Okay, that should be good. Out with the old and with the new. All right. All right, we got the master cylinder bench bleb, got it installed. My young son Caleb came home from school and helped me bleed the brakes because they still would not gravity bleed or suction bleed the rears. So we went ahead and had him in the driver's seat working the brake pedal, and I bled the brakes, and I got plenty of fluid this time out of the back, which before I couldn't get but like a little tiny squirt every once in a while. This time I got normal bleeding fluid coming out back there. So I'm gonna go give this thing a test drive, and we're gonna wrap this thing up. All right, back from the test drive, and the van is fine. The brakes are perfect now. No problems, no vibrations, no shakes. Took it up a highway, did some surface street driving. I took some temperature readings with a infrared gun after I drove it the first time, before I did the repair. And the front wheels, the temperature readings were like 365 degrees a piece. This time they're at 180, and I drove it 10 times further than I did the first time on this test drive after I replaced the front rotors. So we did the front rotors and pads, repacked the wheel bearings, replaced the rear drums, flushed all that transmission fluid out of the lines, put a master cylinder on it, bled the brakes again, and seems to be good to go, other than the air conditioning doesn't work. But they didn't say anything about fixing that, but I will mention it to them when I call them to let them know it's ready. If you got anything out of this, please give me a like. Hey, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, if you're new to the channel. If you're not new, thanks for coming back and seeing me again. Catch me in the next one. Peace.